Welcome to the Openhearted Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Open-Hearted Podcast. I'm your host, Will Wheeler, joined with my main man, Photon John. What's going on, brother?
Oh, yeah. I've missed your face a little bit.
Missed my face, eh? Oh, well, story of my life, mate. Story of my life. What's going on?
I got back from Rockhampton and Bundaberg yesterday, and one more weekend on the tour, and then I can relax.
Nice. Get back into the swing of things. So you're in a new pad too, mate?
Yeah, man. Up near Redcliffe, about 600 meters from the beach.
Yeah, nice. How's that treating you?
Yeah, good, man. The beach is very, very therapeutic, especially with so much going on.
Do you go for like walks along the beach, like long walks along the beach?
Yeah, I need
stuff like
that in my dating profile or something now.
Yeah, totally. This time you're actually doing it, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
How about yourself?
Oh man, just I don't know, just I think a lot of stuff's just starting to catch up with me. Just been moving, like, so I'm in a new place. I've been living here for a few weeks now. Just whole lot of stuff I've been doing with Neurodiversity Academy, whole bunch of stuff. So I don't know. My wife and I, we went to have a look at like going on a cruise or something soon, and we're just sort of like, it was good to look at, but we're just not ready for it yet. But fun times. It's good to look at and get that happening. But anyway, we should really get our guest on for today. So let's get our guest up today, Amanda Riley, all the way from country Victoria. Would you say that, Amanda?
Yeah.
Country Victoria. Nice. It's funny because we had someone on, a few weeks ago, and he's from country Victoria as well. And I was like, all the way from Melbourne. I'm like, no, not Melbourne, because it's completely different. So, Amanda, thank you so much for joining us today. How's it going?
Yeah, good.
You nervous?
I've got my fidget toy. I'm
Good job. But I tell you what, we're really excited to have you on because, I think this is a really cool topic to be talking about. Yeah. So for all of our listeners out there, what we're going to be covering today is ditching the negative narrative around ADHD. So, I think it's probably the right time to be talking about this. I've said this a few times now. We've got I think there's the, what do you call it? An inquiry going on about ADHD in Parliament shortly. So talking about this stuff is pretty cool. But before we get stuck into this, we might just do a little bit of housekeeping. So for anyone listening, please subscribe, like, and follow to our social media platforms. We are now available on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, LinkedIn. And if you haven't already done so, please go and visit our openheartedsociety.com website, and please subscribe so you can get all the great information, blogs, and up and past podcasts that we have done so far. So, Photon John, you ready for this, brother?
I am ready for this. Let's do it.
Nice. So, for anyone listening as well, if you have any questions, feel free to just ask questions and during the podcast, and we'll be more than happy to go through them. So, Amanda, you've been waiting a long time to come on this, right? Like, you reached out to me how long ago?
Whenever, I think I caught one of your posts on LinkedIn months ago when you were looking for, people to come on and stuff. And I think I messaged you straight away. And
yeah. Well, this is the thing. I think the thing is, we're like, Kev, where are we at with like all of our bookings at the moment? I think it's like after August or
yeah, we're booked into August, I think. Yeah.
so we do have a lot of people coming on. So I apologize. I felt really bad because I'd always see you there, and I'm like, you know what, we've really. I can't wait to get Amanda on because she looks like she's really keen to come on. So you know, yeah. So enough about that. But Amanda, please tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, all of that type of stuff.
Yeah. Well, actually, one of my strengths is spotlight. So I love talking about topics I'm passionate about. So that's probably why I was so keen. I have been in the change, comms and facilitation industry for about over 20 odd years in Australia and overseas. I lived undiagnosed with ADHD for 45 years, and I've now lived diagnosed with ADHD for 5 years. So I've got a really good understanding of both sides, pre and post diagnosis. I'm also an accredited strengths profile practitioner and a BAA character strengths professional. So I've done a lot of work in the background with strengths and stuff. And I've done a postgrad at Melbourne Uni on positive psychology. So that's why I've kind of put all of that together and my neurodiverse kids. And I've just got a massive passion to talk about this subject and just flipping that negative narrative of disorders and deficits that the medical industry loves to label you with.
Cool. You know, what have you, like, you know, you said you were living undiagnosed for about 45 years.
Yeah.
Now, out of curiosity, because I was undiagnosed for about 40 years or 39 years or something like that. Did you ever have any inkling that you were all of those years ago, or did it just come to you all of a sudden and you're like, holy crap, this has happened.
Yeah.
Oh, we're hearing more about it now. What was the experience for you?
I always knew that I operated differently. I always knew that I just didn't seem to get things. I lost things. I forgot things. I could tick the box and all the ADHD traits. If you look back on one of my school reports, which was computer studies. So this was when I was 14. So I can't imagine it was a very technical computer studies. The teacher wrote in my report, he gave me an E. And he wrote in my report, this is not due to my knowledge levels, but my diligence.
Yeah, crazy.
Because I was always late and I never handed anything in. So he gave me an E. And then about 18 months before I got my diagnosis, my 8-year-old daughter was diagnosed. So we were still in that group of hyperactive little boys. Adults don't have ADHD. And started doing all the reading and the research to try and help her and understand it, etc. And then all the boxes just started being ticked.
It's so common.
Yeah.
My whole family pretty much happened that way. I mean, my little sister was diagnosed as autistic, and then my mum read the literature and went, "You should probably read this and go see someone." And then, but since then, I don't think my mum would mind me saying she's quite sure she's there as well.
Yes.
And then learning through that. You were mentioning it just before. And sorry if I'm jumping a little early into questions here, but cool. Forgetting things and whatnot. So I'm about 4 weeks away from probably an ADHD diagnosis on top of the ASD. But I've never. I always identified so strongly with autism. I never even looked into or thought very much about ADHD, and this is probably something for both of you to maybe answer. But what are sort of the symptoms around that? Because I've been on tour with my band for nearly 2 months now, and it's a constant mission of everyone staying on me to make sure I'm not forgetting things and running off and getting distracted. And could you just maybe, I guess, elucidate a little on what you mean by that?
Yep. Well, for myself, it was forgetting things, but it was more the fact that, like, I'd be sitting in a meeting and I'd always have to be silent because I would say something that someone had just said, or ask a question that had been asked 10 minutes ago. So I got to the point where at work and stuff that I would just kind of sit there and not really say much in meetings. It's things like for some silly reason I was in charge of family finances, right? And at one stage we had 2 cars. One of them was uninsured for a year because I'd gotten to the point of getting quotes, but then never did the final push button. It was only until the next year that I kind of went, I'm driving the car.
Lucky type of thing. Yeah, totally.
And then the other car I had insured twice. So with paying double with 2 different
Oh my God. What, with 2 different companies?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, my God. So it's not like, because I thought if you hadn't done it with the one company, sometimes they'd be like, hey, we've double charged you. We'll give you like money back. Oh, wow. That's a big one. Damn. How much were you paying?
Oh, God, I can't remember. But this was about the time when my son was born. So I had 2 kids, 18 months and under, and undiagnosed ADHD. And I was just all over the shop. Like if, there was red flags absolutely everywhere. But it's all the internalizing you do as well. It's all that, like I've, the hyperactivity, but mine's internal where I just constantly critiquing myself. I mean, RSD is a massive thing, which I now manage a lot better. But it was just that I always have a song in my head. It doesn't stop. It never stops.
Yeah, totally. Out of curiosity as well, like what was it like growing up? Like, because and Kev and I have spoken about this, and it was interesting how Kev was speaking before about when he was younger. Oh, he's always seen himself as the ASD type of thing. I was the same with dyslexia, right? And it wasn't until, we found out I was ADHD as well. But, what do you look back at, say, when you were, I don't know, in high school or even in your early 20s growing up, and you look at a lot of things, say relationships or whatever that was, and you sort of look back and go, oh, wow, that makes sense. Or, I can see why I was like that, or this and that type of thing.
Yeah, definitely still. Like I had undiagnosed anxiety the entire time as well. So I actually didn't suffer from time blindness and stuff like that. I do now because my anxiety is managed. I'm now useless. I would work my butt off to get things in on time and to be a C average student. So I put in so many hours, but because I didn't get the knowledge to start with in the classroom, then I couldn't learn it. I used to wag a lot. Back then it was a lot easier to wag school. I think in year 11 I wagged 1 day a week, just because I couldn't cope going to double French and being put on the spot. I hated school, and just, with the relationships and social stuff, just always thinking, I always feeling like I'm on the outside, like just not getting it. Not sure what
you're looking through the window sort of thing. Did you potentially have something similar to what I had, where if it was like a topic of special interest for me, or if I was just having a great week where I could concentrate, you'd get really good grades? Because that's what would happen to me. My grades were really sporadic, but sometimes I would get good grades in some things.
If I liked a subject, like I really liked English, and so I did well in English. So if I had that interest in the topic, which is a common thing. If I had the
and I think the teacher played a big role too.
Oh my
like
God.
I could hate certain things, but if I had a teacher who could really get down to my level, it was surprising how good I could actually do in something I really didn't like, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Teachers, I mean, my daughter's now in year 8, and her marks are dependent on the kind of teacher that she has and whether she engages with that teacher. If she doesn't engage with that teacher, she doesn't try in the class. And I'm like,
crazy. Awesome stuff. I think it is definitely interesting to hear about, that side of things, because I think a lot of people who are neurodistinct who are listening right here probably can relate to that on so many different levels as well. But moving on into the podcast, because you're starting to do some really great stuff around neurodiversity now. Tell us a little bit about that work that you're currently doing.
Yeah, okay. It took me a little while to slowly emerge into the neurodiversity side of what I do, because I was diagnosed 3 years ago, but I only came out professionally probably about 2 years ago. And I was lucky because I was in a comfortable space. I knew it wouldn't impact my career. So, I'm one of the lucky ones that could, being a bit older, I guess, come out and not have to worry too much about the repercussions. And ever since I have, just the conversations I've had with other people, the feedback I get, there's so many adults out there who, for so many different reasons, stigma or fear of discrimination or fear of being made fun of, typical, Australian type stuff, don't want to be made fun of, and, then I thought, I got to take my experience of change in comms and all my new strength stuff, and I've got to do something a bit different with it, and I've got to kind of embrace this neurodiverse area, because the amount of people I now, who go, oh, fantastic, telling a story, blah, 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 and when I go, why don't you tell yours, they just can't, and they just, I have some very good friends now because I'm so open about it. I've kind of attracted my, my little ADHD.
Tribe.
Yeah, my little weird ADHD tribe, as we call ourselves. Our little motto is stay weird. But some of them haven't even told their families because the parents just wouldn't get it, or the parents just, would roll their eyes, or some close friend of mine hasn't even told her kids because she doesn't want them to worry. And it's just, so to me, it's just got to be part of the conversation more. So
it's interesting. Yeah, it's definitely interesting because I know a lot of people who are like that as well, and I think with neurodiversity as well, what I've learned, and I'm sure a lot of people would know, I'm very open about it, do you know what I mean, in regards to myself. And what I've learned is everyone's not like me, you know what I mean? And people do handle things in their own way. Look, to tell you the truth, it can make things easier if you've got the right support around you, but also too, if you're open about something and you don't have that right support. So if we're thinking about the workplace, things like that, that could potentially turn back on you, type of thing. So that's where there is this really hard type of, how do we approach this type of thing? And some people can have different experiences and or want to take a different pathway, and that's fine as well. If that makes sense. Cool. But I think the best thing is, this is what we came to talk about today. So what exactly is the negative narrative around ADHD? Because we want to talk about this type of stuff. What is it? We've already sort of touched based on a little bit of stuff there, but let's deep a little bit deeper into this so we can honestly turn that around, because this is what it's all about, and get to the positive side of it as well.
I did an article recently on this. To get a diagnosis of any kind of neurodiversity or neurodivergence, you have to prove that you are deficit in some areas, that you have disorders, that your quality of life hasn't been awesome. You have to get other people to provide evidence and agree that, there is issues with what you do, there is you're disordered, you're all this kind of stuff. And by the time you end up getting a label, you've got like a pile this high of negative stuff that's happened throughout your life. And in some cases like mine, you go back through the decades to find all the crap stuff that you did, or find all the things that, went wrong, or when you got fired, or this or that. And so by the time, if you're not already have mental health concerns, which I did by the time I got diagnosed, by the time you've collected all of this information and you land and get your label, it's just like you're at your lowest, when it should be, it should be a new start. It should be, something positive. So I rally strongly against all this language and stuff, but it is definitely an important part of the process, because you have to show where you have struggled to get the label, and the label is what is attached to, accommodations or your legal rights or NDIS or anything else. So you've got to kind of get that label. So I kind of look at it from a 3-step process of you seek out your diagnosis, or you highly suspect you've got it, because understandably, not everyone can get a diagnosis at the moment, whether it's due to money or whether it's due to long wait times, especially post-COVID. Trying to get assessments is really hard. Do all your research, because there's so much information out there. And as we know, everybody is different. No two people with autism are the same, and no two people with ADHD are the same. So you read all the bump and you kind of find out what relates to you and where it showed up in your world. And so you understand how it works with you. And then you spend that time flipping it around. So, you might be, a daydreamer or whatever you've been called throughout your life. You just stare out the window, whereas actually you're a deep thinker, and you've got, by the time someone has come up with one solution for a problem, I tend to have 3. I always have a plan A, B, and C, right? And so you try and start to look at it from that positive angle, because every single person has strengths, and every single person is good at some stuff and bad at other stuff. So like planning and organizing, I know are my weaknesses. I mean, the amount of people with ADHD I've done strengths work with, and they're in the bottom. You can see
it's interesting, because I'm the opposite. I'm probably good at planning and stuff like that. So I think that's where we can't go, hey, look, you're ADHD, so you mustn't be good at that. Do you know what I mean? And this is where it is really difficult, because it's like, because I see so many people doing like, say, for example, neurodiversity training. And I've sat there when people have been doing neurodiversity training and they're talking about stuff, and I'm just like, that doesn't even apply to me. Do you know what I mean? And it's sort of like they're telling people who don't know anything about neurodiversity, for example, and now I'm being labeled as that person because that's what I've said I am, type of thing, if that makes sense.
Yep.
I find
hate to quote.
Sorry, you go.
Sorry. No, you go.
You go, Seb. Yeah.
I was going to say, I find that contributes personally to the difficulty trying to explain in a productive way to someone else what neurodiversity means for me. And how that might affect our relationship or anything like that, because it is hard to pin down things without pigeonholing yourself a little bit. You've met one ADHD person, you've met one ADHD person, so it's really difficult.
And it's funny because when Kev was down in Sydney, about 6 weeks ago now or something like that, we went out for dinner, and it was interesting because we're talking sort of about our experience and that. And I'm like, how are you feeling at the moment, Kev? And it was interesting because he goes, man, the sound of the traffic, because I think it was raining and there was like the wetness of the road and the traffic, and then a fire engine went past, and there was just so much like sensory overload there, which I would never have picked up.
Yeah, I mean, you say like when I say the traffic, I mean that blue car over there, and then the different sound of that red car over there, and then the fire engine, and then the tires on the road, and then. And trying to drown all that out to just focus on, what Will's saying to me.
I find the same. I'm fully open about the fact that I now take medication. It was a lifesaver for me. It literally turned my world around. I was one of the very lucky ones that the first time I tried medication, it worked. I know a lot of people now, after having it for a few years, I know a lot of people, medications work for them, or it takes them a while to find the right one. And when it started, so I'd take it, and just the transformation was amazing, like the fog lifted and all this kind of stuff. But then when it started to wear off, all the sounds came back, like that conversation there and the air conditioner and that conversation there. I just couldn't filter them all out again. It was just like they all had equal rights in my head at the time. And it was just kind of like you're trying to talk to someone, and it's just like, oh, I'm getting every fourth word here.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I saw the other side that I kind of went, oh my gosh, how have I lived with this?
Yeah, and it's interesting because even in regards to medication, that everyone's different as well. I don't need medication for mine, where other people they do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine. I think that's a thing as well, right? Because people need that. You probably find that if you were to go without that now, you're going to struggle really bad, right?
Oh, I do. And I just, because every now and then I do. And I have no patience. So I become really snappy with the kids and I just really grumpy and I don't even want to be around anyone. It is just all of a sudden, again, such an overload. And then the fog descends and I walk into a room and I'm trying to do something and I end up doing 5 things. And then, my husband just follows me around the house for half completed things. And
it's totally.
It's so obvious when I haven't taken it now.
Totally. So, talking about that, so do you think that is simply due to a lack of education that, there's this whole negative type of, I suppose, spin on ADHD, or like you were saying before, some people, so for example, I remember I met with this young woman last year, right? And she was talking about how she was about to go and get her ADHD assessment. And I was sort of like, oh, wow, that's fantastic. And she was completely the opposite. She was like, no, I'm not looking forward to it. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. I don't think my parents are going to they say I'm not ADHD, all of this type of stuff. And she had a real negative type of thing. I haven't actually spoken to her since. I might reach out to her to find out, because it'd be interesting to see if that's all changed. But do you reckon that's due to a lot of, I suppose, lack of education? Maybe, I'm thinking with this woman that maybe her parents had always said, no, you possibly couldn't be that. No, I hope you're not. You know what I mean? Do you reckon that's due to a lack of education?
Part of it is. I think it's also due to, what I was saying before about the paperwork and the deficits and stuff. That's the diagnostic criteria as identified in the DSM-5, which is the global book on mental health illnesses, right? So it's got its basis, and all the neurodivergent stuff does. They have their basis in the medical industry, where something has to be broken so it can be fixed. So straight away, it's that mentality that you're broken and we will fix you. It's also very much a male-driven narrative. I mean, it wasn't until, I think, I always get my stats wrong, so,
Oh, it's okay.
Google it later.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. I think it was 2008, which is the first time that they started looking at ADHD assessments for adults, and they actually started tweaking the assessments for women. So that was in 2008. That's not that long ago.
No, not at all.
So there's a lot of that, and there's a huge history of especially women with autism who have been misdiagnosed, and ADHD. I've had friends who were diagnosed with anxiety or depression or bipolar, and then eventually, as the education, the knowledge increased, they got their ADHD diagnosis and they dropped everything else, and it worked. They got the right thing. So I think it's the education. It's also the stigma. The stereotypes are just so strong around. I think everyone associates autism with Rain Man and I don't know, some other, well-known movies, and, ADHD is a hyperactive boys. So there's a lot of work to do in the space, of making.
So the biggest thing that's really, it's just interesting how you said people's perception of, say, someone who's autistic or has ADHD and all that.
Yeah.
I think that can come down to sometimes is people, what's the word? Not marketing it, but talking about the different neurotypes who aren't exactly neurodivergent themselves. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It was like I was saying before that I've gone to training of people who aren't even neurodistinct, and they're talking about stuff. I'm thinking, what would you know? Do you know what I mean? And those are the people who are educating these organizations about what neurodiversity is.
Yeah.
It's hard though because it kind of like, you know, in order to better educate people, we need to better study it and come up with more extensive literature, and better sort of try to nail it down. But at the same time, trying to nail it down is also kind of counterproductive. So it's this weird sort of mix that we have to get right.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of get that balance because, I mean, I try and do that a lot in my workshops. I try to, where I focus on the change and comp side because that's where my skill set is, but also the neurodiversity side and how to make comms and everything more neuro-inclusive. But it's kind of hitting that mark of bringing in a stereotype so they understand what you're talking about, but then trying to also highlight the fact that we're all different. So it's kind of meeting in the middle somewhere. But I love doing I do a session where, you know, I put up some of the myths and facts about some of the key, you know, autism or ADHD, and you know, I get people to kind of choose what's true or false and that kind of thing. And that's a really interesting thing because I think the first time I ever presented, you know, I had 3 people. It was just a small group of 10. I had 3 people come up to me afterwards and kind of go, oh, I didn't realize women could have ADHD. And then I didn't realize. And so that's when I realized how low the level of knowledge is. So the baseline's like really low.
So is it kind of like, okay, so do you understand everything I just explained to you? Cool. Now forget all that and let's dive deeper.
Because I'm unique.
Exactly.
It is interesting like that because I was only speaking to someone the other day because when I first started going into, say, the neurodiversity space, I would be going to a lot of D&I, you know, I don't know, events and stuff like that. And this is going back years ago now. And bringing up the word neurodiversity, I would get weird looks you know, because I would go in, I'd go to, say, big banks and stuff like that, like the Bank of Australia or whatever it's called. And they'd be rattling on about how great their diversity and inclusion programs are. And then I'd be like, what about neurodiversity? And just the looks on their faces was just, what? Yeah. But now those same people are now starting to reach out to me and going, oh my God, like we're starting to hear all this stuff now. We want to learn more, which is good. But at the time it was sort of like hitting my head against a brick wall type of thing.
And I think you and I've had this little conversation before on LinkedIn that, yes, we have a neurodiversity program and it's the autism group who sit in IT, you know, and it's just that, you know, I mean, it's great that stuff is happening, but that's
not neurodiversity. That's not that's the thing. That's not what I think. What I see is that an organization has a neurodiversity hiring program, and that's good. And really, that's more of an autism hiring program. Yeah. But what we're working towards is actually creating inclusive workplaces, creating workplaces where we don't necessarily have to say that we're autistic or ADHD. We can just go there and do our job, or our managers understand that if we are open to them about being whatever, they're able to click and go, okay, I know exactly what needs to happen.
Or I would say rather than what needs to happen, because you know it's not a cookie cutter, but they then become prepared to listen and allow you to explain to them. For me, for instance, you know, as an autistic person, I need to be in the most creative role in that company. That's you know, problem solving and creating products and services and stuff. That's where I really thrive. You throw me into a IT role and I'll just, you know, wither on the vine. You know, but as soon as you start trying to pin me down into this really sort of rigid job, depending on what that job is, I might either react really well to that because I do like routine, or I might just completely lose all interest in working.
Totally.
And a lot of these programs too, they expect the neurodivergent person to come forward and be open about, you know, who they are and where they might need help or accommodation. So straight away you're asking them to be open about something which they've probably not been open about often, and to ask for help. So, you know, I focus on the they're an invisible audience. So it's not about, you know, you have to assume that you've already got, you know, 1 in 7 or 1 in 5, whatever the latest stats are, number of people in your organization who are neurodiverse. So how do you cater for them, and how do you help them feel recognized and feel like they belong and improve their well-being and mental health, which, you know, from a business perspective, increases the bottom line. So, you know, it's not as simple as just putting a program in place. It's a broader thing.
And the thing is too, okay, that's good to want people to be open and, you know, communicate and say, hey, look, I'm this. But a lot of the time, those people actually don't know what they need. So I could go, hey, Amanda, so you've just shared with me your ADHD. So what do you need? And maybe you've just been diagnosed, for example, and you're probably thinking, I don't know what the hell I need. Do you know what I mean? I'm just sharing that with you. You know what I mean? And this is where,
no idea.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where you're then thinking, you know, and it's sort of like, well, I've just shared this with my boss, and my boss doesn't even know how to help me. And the boss is probably thinking, how do I help? This person doesn't even know what they need.
That's
What's wrong with them?
That's where the listening comes in. I think that's the main thing that needs to happen as an employer with an employee, you know, because they may not be sure. But if you just go, okay, I'm now aware this person is neurodivergent, let's look at the situation. Let's listen to them. Let's communicate, and let's figure out the best way forward.
But do you know what, right? It's the same in education, because someone could go, hey, look, I'm dyslexic. And then the teacher may not have any training in that at all. And they can't provide them, or they might, you know, they might go, what tools do you need? And a lot of people who are not me, reason why I'm saying not me is I do know what tools people need, because I'm in this thing. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, these organizations, these schools and that don't even know what tools they can provide these students to help them to succeed. Like, this is the thing that I see, especially when we're talking about education as well, I see a lot of disability, like education places or recruitment places, whatever you want to call them, right? And I've seen them do like presentations on stuff like that. And I'm like, you just don't know anything about neurodiversity. It's someone who's not neurodivergent talking about some stuff. And it's like, yeah, okay, some of that could work, but that's not what it's about. Like, for example, there was one lady talking about something, and she's showing us all of these tools that people could use, but it was like this free version. And it's like, well, if you're going to be studying at a school shouldn't be providing someone who has a disability with the free version. They should be investing in the proper version to help them get through. You're not going to provide the free version of a wheelchair ramp. Do you know what I mean? You're going to invest in the proper one that's properly designed to help that person into your building. Same with what they're doing.
Which is why you've got to flip the negative narrative. You got to see that every person in the right environment and supported with the right tools or whatever they need, they can all shine, you know. So helping someone reconnect, because once you come to your ADHD diagnosis, which was my experience and also found with others, by the time you get there, you're just so... Well, there's kind of, it's unsettling to get the diagnosis, but also a massive relief. But then you're kind of like, what next? Because you've had years where RSD has just, especially for me at work, just controlled everything. So little confidence because you keep missing things and you can't work out why. You're not getting things and you can't work out why. So that's why I think it's so important that when the time is right, that you take your time to go, right, okay, I know where I struggle, but what am I good at? And how can I reframe that? So when I go into a new work environment or when I'm speaking to someone and they ask me about my ADHD, I can go, well, everyone likes to hear the negative. So you can reel some of that off. But then you can kind of go, but you know what? That means I'm really good at this. So I'm really, actually, I'm good at planning, but I'm just not good at following through plans. But I'll always, as I said before, have that plan A, B, and C. I'm creative. So if I'm in the right environment and nurturing team, I will let my ideas flow. Some of them are wacky, but, some of them work. But if I think that if I'm having any confidence issues, then I won't say anything. So you won't get that side of me. You just get the masking side or I'm just going to do my best to fit inside, which, you've hired me and you're getting 70% of me.
Yeah, it's not you at your full potential.
No. And I've got 2 kids who are 12 and 13, and I want them to be, when they hit the workforce, my kids are going to be in a position where they know about themselves so well. They are resilient because they would have had many bad days. They know what they want to do because we have open conversations about neurodiversity, what it means, and, they laugh at the stuff I put up on Instagram when I do reels. So, I engage them that way.
So do you think a little bit sorry, do you want to finish?
No, so yeah, I'm just going to say, so the workforce needs to be ready because they won't fit into the current structure.
Do you think with regards to changing the conversation a little bit about it is what you were just saying? So sort of arming the next generation of neurodiverse people with a really good,
definitely.
a lot of information about
so
understanding
more aware.
of themselves.
Yeah, they're going to be so more self-aware than any generation before them. So, it's only fair that we equip the world for them.
Because
they're a handful.
I think their future employers will too. I think so long as we keep pushing.
Yeah, I think that
we do what we do.
Yeah, no, and it's true. I think it is a two-way street. I always say this, that us as neurodistinct people, we have to contribute just as much as the people who we need help from, if that makes sense. So if we're in education, and I'm talking maybe, when I speak about education, if we say like kids, right? Kids who are in year 1 going through to high school, the end of high school, parents really need to know exactly what they can have to provide to their, to fill their teachers in, all that. But once that kid leaves high school and maybe goes into higher education again, that kid needs to be able to learn to stand on their own 2 feet as well. So how are we able to help them to, know what it is that they need, what they need to ask for, all of that type of stuff. So once they do go into the workforce, they do have a lot more confidence in themselves, and they're not so heavily reliant on maybe mum and dad or something like that as well,
Yeah, the education system is a hard one because if teachers have a busy classroom and they can't see it, then they kind of forget all the conversations you've had with them.
Totally. It is definitely a hard one, and I sometimes I hear a lot of people, and look, don't get me wrong, I had a lot of bad teachers back in the day who probably put me in the too hard basket type of thing, but then I had a lot of really good teachers who really brought the best out of me. So sometimes it really can just depend on the person. And I even know from myself, working in adult education, your attitude towards people, you definitely get a lot different sort of things when you approach things differently. Yeah. So with the attention ADHD is now getting, how have you seen the conversation change? So like I said, we are hearing a lot more about it now. It is getting spoken about. We saw it at the what do they call it? That press club or something in
yes.
Yeah, that was spoken about. That's been spoken about a few times at the press club there, or whatever it's called. How have you seen the conversation change?
The conversation is definitely changing. I mean, it's hard to separate myself from it because I'm in it all the time, like, yourself. So it's kind of hard I see it all the time, but whether other people do or not. But it is definitely changing. I will bore the hell out of anyone who asks me about ADHD, or if they dare try and give me a fact about my ADHD. So there is definitely changing. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, piss off.
Yeah.
I think I did that to my poor mother-in-law when my daughter got diagnosed, her granddaughter, and she was just like, oh, but someone told me that their daughter got diagnosed and they went and saw a psychologist once and they were fine. My gosh, she's in England, the amount of articles I sent the poor lady to read. But that's an aside.
Hang on. But aren't we all a little bit ADHD?
Oh, yeah. And
Don't make me cry.
This is when, and this is when having the facts is a good thing, because you also get people like going, God, everyone's getting diagnosed these days. It's like, no, not everyone is getting diagnosed. We are finally having the medically driven male narrative change around. Women who have been misdiagnosed for years and all this kind of stuff. So, the conversation is definitely changing, but the attention does have side effects as well because of for in the UK recently, they had that Panorama episode where they were showing that NHS waiting lists are like 4 or 5 years to get assessments. So people are paying an exorbitant amount of money at private clinics to get assessed, and some of the clinics are just ticking 4 questions and you're ADHD. So that brought a lot of negative attention. And there's also a good media story is a negative media story. So trying to focusing on the strengths of people and focusing on the positives is hard to kind of sort the wheat from the chaff at times. But there's definitely, there's some awesome people on LinkedIn who are just doing the positive. There's a lot of speakers getting a lot of attention now who are doing the positive. So, but it's getting that balance, because having it is not awesome, but there's strengths to it and there's strengths to you as an individual. So it's just getting that balance. It's not, I talk about flipping, but it's actually, I think it's more about getting that balance of the positive and the negative and just,
And that's true. I think, I see so many people talking so much about the positives and all of this type of stuff. But I think the big thing as well is that sometimes, let's say, for example, like I'm quite positive about it, but, I find I do have a lot of weaknesses that comes with it. Which at times can be really crippling, my depression, stuff like that, overthinking things, all of that stuff, right? And then, you've got these people who are talking about, superpowers and all this type
I don't
of
like that
stuff.
term.
No, me neither. And the thing is that, okay, I get what they're trying to do and say. Do you know what I mean? But when you see that, if you see yourself as that, and you've got these great strengths, that's great. Okay, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But the people who need the help, they don't see that. Do you know what I mean? So if I'm here going, hey, look, man, I got superpowers and I'm all this, I'm pissing off. Well, I'm pissing off the people I'm trying to help. Do you know what I mean? So it's not helping.
The 2 times I'm really into strength sports, and the 2 times world's strongest man the last 2 years is autistic, and he uses that narrative, and I'm like, I get what you're trying to do, but that's a little bit, that's kind of talking down to some people who have much bigger struggles.
I get it. I've got it to a point now where if that's how you view yourself and that's cool. Do you know what I mean? That's fine, but that's good for you. For me, I don't see it that way. I've got great strengths, and I also have some weaknesses that can really make it difficult for me as well. And I just, when I hear that, it just frustrates me.
Yeah.
Do you think would you maybe agree that you got to be careful not to let your own personal narrative become the narrative that you're trying to push out into the community? If you know what I mean, like this sort of a broader narrative, because different things work for different people. We've got to sort of agree a little bit on what the correct narrative is.
Well, so sorry to cut in here, but you're so right there, Kev, because I think the biggest thing that I find is that let's talk about neurodiversity, right? And then the terms associated with neurodiversity, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of people who are still learning about neurodiversity. And I see people who don't exactly word something to the T, and it's not proper, but they're trying, they're learning. And I then see people like bury those people because they haven't got it exactly right. And it's like, and look, don't get me wrong, I used to be like that. And now I've gotten to a point where I've stepped back and gone, hang on, this person actually probably doesn't realize that when they say, for example, neurodiverse, that means something different to neurodivergent. Do you know what I mean? And instead of ripping that person a new one, why don't we just try and educate that person or really embrace them for at least acknowledging it? You know what I mean?
Because they're probably trying to be an ally.
Exactly, they are.
That's the thing, yeah. I mean, I know that when I got my diagnosis and I had a label, I was possessive of that because for the first time ever, I belonged somewhere and I belonged to a group. It took me another year to find other people to talk to about it, but I knew I belonged to a group. I just didn't know where they were at the time. So I became very possessive of that, and I became my story. Oh, my goodness, I don't know how many people I told, the poor people. But you do that personal narrative because it's, oversharing is one of the things that I sometimes might do. It's a personal narrative, and it did take me a year or two to kind of back away from that and broaden, my awareness and my education and open yourself up to the different experiences, because it's only then that you can actually start to help people. Because if you force your narrative on someone newly diagnosed, it then becomes their narrative and it might not fit and it just gets confusing. And so,
in a way,
I did that professionally.
And look, in a way, and talking about, like, say, the superpower stuff before, right? I come across a lot of people who say, I see it as my superpower, but say when I was younger and first getting into this, I used to be like saying, don't say that, blah, 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 and make a big deal. Now I just don't say anything at all. Do you know what I mean? I just step back and I just go, if that's how you want to describe that for you, that's fine. Do you know what I mean? I just don't get into that. My personal preference is something different, and I've explained that, and that's fine.
Yes.
I think there's a difference between helpful advice and describing symptoms and pushing a personal narrative into a space where we're still trying to define the reality of it, and potentially derailing a little bit the conversation getting where it needs to get to. I think.
Because I don't know if anyone else finds this. Sometimes I even find in the neurodiversity space, I get a feeling sometimes that some people try to get across that, I don't know, they're more neurodistinct than someone else. So that means I'm better than you, or they may know more about it or something. So that means I'm better than you. And it's like, what? You are who you are. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't tell me how I need to do things, or you're no better than me because you've been in this longer. I've lived with this my whole life, We should be embracing it.
Yeah.
Cool. But, talking about that, so how would you say the negative narrative affects undiagnosed people? And I think we said something a little bit about this earlier because, there's this negative, and it's almost like how I spoke about that with that young woman I met last year, how she was about to get diagnosed and her parents were sort of like, no, you can't be. How would you say the negative narrative affects those types of people?
I think it does come down to that personal experience. But the negative, I think it does stop people. And I think because of the similarity too with other like anxiety and depression and ADHD and a bit of autism as well. They can overlap so much that it's easier possibly to accept a diagnosis of the anxiety or the depression or something else, which is more understood, and there seems to be a bit more sympathy for it than the ADHD. But it comes down to the stigma, but I think with more celebrities coming out, which I don't like the whole let's make a big deal of celebrities got ADHD. Well done, you. That just pees me off. But it does help. Yeah, well done.
It does help. I know what you mean, but it can bring good awareness to it. So there does have some positives to it.
If I could butt in there for a second. So plugs the band quite a bit. We're on a 21 show tour right now. We have one song in the middle of the set that I wrote about autistic burnout. And I make sure at first we're a bit, is this a bit lame, that I mentioned that before the song. We're not really a band who likes to explain songs and stuff. But I started doing it, and just show after show, either people, I'd just go, this is for anyone on the spectrum, the crowd, you'd see hands go up. People are coming up and talking to me afterwards. I'm using it to plug the podcast, Will. It's actual people with actual problems are coming up to me, and we're having really good, productive conversations at my shows, and it's making the shows so much more fulfilling, honestly. So it can help in that sense. But there's a bit of patting themselves on the back as well when they go,
that's a little bit but I also, if people use it as an excuse for bad behavior, that just does me in as well. It's not, I mean, I say this to my kids all the time, you'll make mistakes, you'll say the wrong thing, blah blah blah. Your behavior might be different, but it's not an excuse for bad behavior. If you upset someone, you've done something, you need to apologize. Don't use it as an excuse. Just try and learn more about it and learn from it and whatever, but it's never an excuse for bad behavior and stuff.
I can remember back when I had big drug and alcohol problems, and especially when I was drinking a lot, and I would just be a complete idiot, and then the next day I would be messaging people going, man, I'm so sorry, I was just drunk. And then I thought about it, it's like, well, that's not an excuse. No. Do you know what I mean? If you're going to, do something, you need to do something about it. Do you know what I mean?
I do think there needs to be a certain amount of not being too hard on yourself when it comes to neurodiversity, because it can result in some poor behavior unintentionally. But it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse.
It's that difference. And I know that my kids, especially my 13-year-old daughter, will sometimes throw it at me, but I've got ADHD. It's like, yeah, dude, but that's just an excuse. You know better. And I can tell from the example you've given me, you know better.
And then sometimes, I've known neurodiverse people who you can see they're consciously using it as an excuse. But, it can result sometimes unintentionally in some poor behavior. But when that happens, you can't just go, oh, I'm autistic and you have to forgive me. You have to be like, well,
I apologize. Stand up.
I apologize. That was poor. I understand that now.
Yeah, totally. Even with some of my students in the past, they've come into class and all that, and they're like, I'm dyslexic. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm dyslexic as well. But then they won't turn up to class. They won't do all this stuff. And it's like, hey, look, man, you're missing, you're really falling behind. Yeah, I'm dyslexic. It's like, well,
No.
Just because you're dyslexic doesn't mean that you're falling behind. Not coming to class is probably why you're falling behind.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and this is another thing as well that I talk about is that, you know, you can't use as an excuse. And even in education, us as teachers as well, you know, we need to, you know, if people are going to start pulling that card, okay, well, they shouldn't get a fair, you know, whatever it is, trial or whatever you want to call it, if they're not working in with the teacher themselves.
Yeah. You know that your brain works differently. You know that your brain is unique. So you know that you have to do some things differently. So
totally
learn about it and try and, you know, but, you know, some people are in different stages and different levels of awareness. But that's where the whole understanding yourself and the strengths, but also the weaknesses bit is really important.
Totally. So what advice, so we're getting close to the end here now. So what advice would you give to newly or soon to be diagnosed ADHD people? My dyslexia tripping me off there. Thank you.
I always start with, I say this to a lot of people, whether they are seeking a diagnosis or whether they're trying to understand more. It's like, just be curious, but be kind to yourself as well. Don't be afraid of what you might find. And just because you're seeking a diagnosis and you might end up with a label, it's up to you what you do with it from that point. But just the fact that you know, and you can now focus your energies onto something that is tangible rather than trying to work out how to, you know, support yourself and stuff. And from that point, it's up to you about who you tell and why you tell them and all that kind of thing. But don't ever be scared about just taking that first step. But also, I think I mentioned this earlier, that do all the reading, do all the research, because there's so much good stuff out there, and there's a lot of conflicting stuff as well, which is why I think you need to do a broad education.
Not
piece.
just chat GPT, because you're going to get some random crap doing that.
Yeah, and not just TikTok. And
true.
try and find experience that relates to you, because like a 20-year-old on TikTok is going to have a very different experience to like myself. So you find, I mean, I follow a few people on Instagram and I must admit TikTok and stuff as well, but I find the ones that relate to me, that kind of, that's me, rather than, you know, there's so many out there. And then, you know, look for the positives. Actually, positive's not the right word, but look for your strengths. Everyone's got them. You've been probably battered for quite a few years in your own self-confidence. Now's the time to be gentle and just kind of reconnect with what you're good at, because it's there. It's just under layers of crap, but it's there. Everyone has them. So I think it's really important that starting to, for yourself, and if you've got neurodiverse kids, it's so important that you find that new language, you know, especially when, you know, that you're sitting in an assessment with them and they don't always understand the terminology. So they look to the people around them to see their facial expressions and to see what they're saying. And their parents are talking deficit and disorder because the doctor is, and it's just, you start them off really badly. So, it's really important, I think, that everyone finds their own new narrative.
Yeah, I think everyone has their own, I suppose, experience when they're about to get diagnosed or, you know, they're newly being diagnosed. I know for myself, when someone sort of mentioned to me that could potentially be ADHD, and this is just because I work in this space, I was almost excited. I was almost like, oh my God, I really hope I do get diagnosed for ADHD. Do you know what I mean? And then once I got diagnosed, I was like, yeah! You know what I mean? But like, sorry, Kev, you go.
Why? Can I ask why?
Well, it was, the reason for me was like, it was, I don't know, I was already dyslexic. And then it was sort of like, I don't know, because I'd already was working in this space.
Yeah.
It was, and I could see a lot of. I think it connected me to a lot of my strengths. Do you know what I mean? I was like, now that makes sense. Now I can say that I'm this. I can say, it makes sense, because before that I was dyslexic and there was a lot of similarities and all that, but now it all clicks. If that makes sense,
And that's pretty much exactly what I was going to say. It just, it was like getting that missing puzzle piece. And for me at the moment, with the ADHD journey, and I'm going to guess I have to eat my words if it doesn't come back that I am. I'm quite confident I am. But it did just, the autism really made sense when I got that diagnosis, and I was so happy and elated to finally get it. And say, okay, and look back at my life after reading all the literature going, I remember this and that and this. So I think, that's potentially what Will was talking about there.
No, I get it.
but like I said as well, a lot of people don't have that same experience. They are very nervous and unsure of what life will be like after that type of thing, So I've had to really step back as well and go, not everyone is me. They don't have that, they don't see it the way I see it, and that can be and I think that is sometimes the problem, because people are sometimes saying, oh, you're ADHD. Yes, you can be this and you can be that and you're this and that. And it's like, well, some people may never be this, and some people may never be that. Yeah. And some people might be like, that's not me. And then they try to be that, and they're like, no, I can never be that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So little things like that. But awesome stuff there. Amanda, thank you so much. Was there, if there were some people who wanted to get in contact with you or find out some of your work or check out your TikToks or whatever it is you do on Instagram or whatever, where's the best place to find you?
I am on LinkedIn just under my own name, and I'm on there quite a lot. I also have a website and an Instagram account called Thriving with Neurodiversity. So just, .com.au. So just reach out.
Title of our first episode.
What's that, sorry, Kev?
I believe that was the title of our first episode.
Oh, Thriving with Neurodiversity. Oh, yeah, it was too. Yeah, it was too.
There you go.
The very first one.
Yeah.
I think we've almost been going for a year, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, we're all getting off track now.
Yeah, sorry, Amanda. You just finished what you were saying.
It always happens towards the end. The tangents come in, and it's just everyone goes off track. That's cool. But yeah, I'm happy. I'm always happy to talk about this. So if people just have questions or just are interested about finding out about diagnosis or whatever, I can at least point them in a direction, or just linking in my positive psychology and workplace well-being to it all. So yeah, there's, I don't, being ADHD and I guess a entrepreneur, although I use that term loosely, I do about 4 or 5 different things. So,
Nice.
Just reach out.
Classic ADHD right there, right? Photon John, did you have anything else you wanted to say before we wrap everything up, my man?
I did just want to say apologies to anyone commenting. I have a feeling the stream wasn't quite working, but we will have a look.
Yeah, we didn't have too many people. I can see there was a few people watching, but we didn't have too many comments come through today, which isn't a bad thing. I think we were having some pretty good conversations there. Amanda, did you have a good time?
I did. That hour went quick, which is always a good thing.
Time flies when you're having
it
fun.
It was good.
That's it. Awesome. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you. Please check out everything that Amanda's doing. She's doing some really great stuff. As for the podcast, we've got some other great guests coming up shortly. My name's Will Wheeler, joined with my main man, Photon John. This is the Open Hearted Podcast. Till next time.